For months now, everyone's been really zeroed in on what's been going on in the Middle East with the United States campaign against Iran, of course, bringing the world into a global energy crisis that is both monumental and historic. But economic and geopolitical pressures have made it so the United States needs an exit ramp. And with France and Great Britain actually sending carrier groups to the region and having open communications with the Iranians, this gives this administration a way out. But they can't let the public settle and actually look into the catastrophe that has been our operation in the Middle East against Iran right now. So they need a cheap political W, and that's where Cuba comes in. That's why the media is absolutely flooding the zone with reports that Cuba is actually the greatest threat to national security right now because they got their hands on 300 drones, and that they're pointing those directly at the Key West. Of course, strategically, if we just look at the basic analysis, everyone knows that's completely false. But that's not stopping the US media machine from trying to argue that an isolated island 90 miles off the coast of Florida with 11 million starving people is actually the greatest threat to national security. So let's look at the pieces that are moving on the geopolitical chessboard here, because they're really important as this narrative is being set up for the US invasion of Cuba. First thing, like we mentioned, the leak to Axios saying that there's 300 drones that have been acquired by Cuba, by our enemies, either China or Iran. The second, of course, is the DOJ indictment of a 94-year-old Raul Castro because of an operation from 30 years ago. And the last being the USS Nimitz, a United States flagship being sent right off the coast of Cuba. And that's really kind of one of the final pieces to be set on the board before the strike actually happens. Now, before we really break down what's happening here, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you like this kind of strategic geopolitical analysis, we usually tie things into the macroeconomics, so we do appreciate it. It really helps us break into the algorithm. Now, just a few days ago, supposed classified information was leaked to Axios that Cuba had acquired 300 Chinese and Iranian-made drones and that they were pointed directly at Key West and Guantanamo Bay. Now, the problem here with this narrative is the infrastructure that's actually available to the Cuban government. Now, a Shahed 136 or a Mohajer 6 drone isn't something that you launch out of your backyard with a smartphone. They require specialized pneumatic launchers and vehicle-mounted racks, satellite uplinks, and heavy command and control vans. These systems, they rely on continuous telemetry and pre-programmed GPS coordinates. Now, the US military has complete electronic warfare supremacy over the Florida Straits and the entire region in general. And the moment that those launch frequencies actually emit a signal, the electronic warfare suites on a US Navy vessel in the Key West, they're going to fry the targeting systems or spoof the GPS so it never actually leaves Cuban airspace. The fact is, the Pentagon and the Cuban government both know that the logistical abilities for Cuba to actually pull that off just simply are not there. This country, since January, has been suffering from a massive fuel crisis because of a blockade that was imposed by the United States. Since the fall of Maduro in Venezuela, all the fuel's been cut off to Cuba, and they've been stretching what supplies they possibly have months longer than they should have, than all projections actually gave, just to keep Cuba running at some semblance that was keeping them above an apocalyptic level. Now, I'm not holding any water for the Cuban regime, but I mean, they're not stupid. They know that if they launch a kinetic attack on an American installation, on a ship, or on the Key West, especially from an identifiable signal, which all these drones do have, they know that by the end of the day, all of Cuba would essentially be turned into a parking lot. But beyond that, if the ground invasion actually commences, right, if the justification of the 300 drones is enough to make the military act, I mean, what is the US military actually facing on the ground? The big worry, of course, is the armored division of Cuba. We're talking about Soviet-era T-72 tanks. And logistics is king on the battlefield when we're talking about this kind of warfare, and the logistics have been absolutely choked off by the United States. So the T-72 is essentially just a 40-ton paperweight at this point. Because the truth is that the Cuban military lacks the hydrocarbon logistics at this point to move a single battalion. Maybe they have them in operation for a day or two, but the Cuban military lacks the hydrocarbon logistics to move a single battalion of tanks, a single battalion of troops, transport supplies, sustain a kinetic fight in any kind of real way. Their Navy is a handful of patrol boats, and their Air Force is grounded due to lack of parts or lack of jet fuel. But the media wants to tell us that this is the greatest threat. I mean, just put the two militaries side by side. You have an amazingly technically advanced US military, which is waning in its ability to fight in modern warfare, but a fight against the Soviet era army that logistically just doesn't have the supplies to conduct any kind of real fight. There's really no way for the Cuban government to stand to any kind of onslaught that the US is considering actually launching. The USS Nimitz carrier isn't there because the Pentagon is afraid of a Cuban invasion. It's a floating television set piece. That's all that it really is. It's there to ensure that the inevitable US intervention looks heroic, looks good on camera. Right? This whole thing is being portrayed as a defense of the homeland rather than Washington just beating up on its starving neighbor. The media wants us all right now to look at Cuba like it's 1962 and Khrushchev is hiding codes under a tarp in Mariel. And that's why they're using terms like Hezbollah. That's why they're using terms like Iranian attack, because they know those words act like activation commands to the American public. But if you look at the actual board, you're looking at a military apparatus in Cuba that is essentially just a Soviet skeleton, a relic of a bygone era. It's a museum that's being held together by hardliners, true believers in rusted Soviet iron. The conventional Cuban army is going to be fighting a day and night battle for Havana. They can barely afford the gas to actually get to negotiations. We need to look past the political panic to actually analyze this, because the blueprint's already set. Right? In January, the US didn't technically invade Venezuela. They were just conducting a law enforcement operation based on narco-terrorist indictments. And that's why the US was able to send in Delta Force, DevGru, and capture Maduro and his wife and fly them straight to a Manhattan federal court. This is exactly why the DOJ is suddenly resurrecting the 1996 Brothers of the Rescue shootdown to indict a 94-year-old Raul Castro. They're indicting a 94-year-old man for what happened 30 years ago at the exact same time that a carrier strike group is landing on the front door of Cuba. Like, this isn't about justice for 1996. This is the legal permission slip that's actually needed to kick the door down in 2026. So this is just a replay of the Venezuela blueprint, really, because it turns an act of war into a heavily armed police raid. The US surrounded Venezuela and just squeezed its economy and made it clear that survival meant capitulation. And that's why we saw CIA Director John Ratcliffe actually go down to Havana to negotiate last week. And he wasn't alone. He brought the specific paramilitary leader who commanded the raid that just captured Maduro in January, brought him directly to the meeting with the Cubans. See, Ratcliffe didn't fly down with a diplomat like he typically would. He brought the specific contractor who bagged Maduro just a couple months earlier. He sat him down at the table. That contractor, right? He's looking at Diaz-Canel in the eyes and say, "We have the zip ties fitted for your wrist already. You can either do this the easy way or the hard way." And the thing is, this is a very effective tactic because the regime, in all likelihood, is going to survive. It's just going to be decapitated, more than likely the same way that we saw in Venezuela. But logistics of this operation are much more in favor of the United States keeping this much less messy. Now, we have to keep reminding ourselves that this is a complete PR move. The Pentagon doesn't want a long, drawn-out campaign 90 miles south of Florida. It wants this to be quick. It wants it to be good on TV. It wants the optics to be nice and sterile and patriotic. What we did in Venezuela was at 2 a.m. we suppressed the air defenses, which were much more sophisticated than what they actually have in Cuba. And the surgical apprehension team hit the presidential compound, and the two high-value targets were on a plane back to New York before the sun came up. The USS Nimitz isn't there for a D-Day invasion. It's there to jam Cuban radar and set up a staging deck for DevGru or Delta and suppress any isolated pockets of resistance while the extraction team grabs Castro and Diaz-Canel. There's no real need for the US military to fight 50,000 Cuban troops on this one. What they're going to do is just turn the lights off, lights that are already flickering. They're going to drop 50 guys on top of the presidential palace, hoping that this thing is going to be over in about 45 minutes. Now, the ideological geopolitical outcry that's coming from this is obvious. This isn't something that people really want, but at the same time, the people of Cuba want this to stop. They're looking at their government and say, we don't want the US to be in charge, but at the same time, you guys haven't been able to overcome any of the sanctions or roadblocks that the US has put in place over the past decades, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. You can have Marco Rubio airdrop a PSYOP on Cuba and tell them that all this is the fault of their government. And part of the Cuban mind is going to believe that, while at the same time knowing that the economic stranglehold that the country is in is because of the United States. But a desperate person who's drowning is always going to grab onto the first boat that comes by. The pieces are all set in place. The USS Nimitz is there. The legal pretext is there, the DOJ indictment of Raul Castro. The leaked evidence of escalation with the Russian and Iranian drones are out for the public to see. Right? The justification for the maneuver, the operation against Castro and Diaz-Canel is in place. The signal to the government that this is happening, with CIA Director Ratcliffe going to Havana with the contractor that bagged Maduro, has happened. So at this moment, all we do is wait to see what Washington, D.C. decides to do next. Listen, I want the Cuban people to be good, really, no matter what regime they're under. And I think that this is a very aggressive move, unlawfully, that's being made by the United States, but they've done everything they have done to construct a pathway for this operation to be done. Now, there's going to be outcry from the international community, but that international community is just going to continue to do what they're doing, because we have to look at this in all honesty. Cuba is in the backyard of the United States, and logistics is king. Before any rival nation would actually be able to marshal the resources to come and intervene on Cuba's behalf, the entire operation would most likely be done. And this creates a new open economic zone for US and foreign capital to pour into Cuba. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And although there's going to be pockets of resistance, hardliners, people who truly believe in the revolution, when they start to see opportunity come in, when younger people start to see that money's coming in, the opportunity that they could have had in Florida may be attainable in Cuba now in the near future, the sentiments will inevitably slide, because we're just talking about survival of a population here, a population that has been struggling and under economic persecution for generations. It's incredibly ruthless how the US has approached this entire thing, but it's incredibly effective. But like I said, the media right now is really flooding the zone with a lot of propagandized information, and we're going to keep looking at the numbers. We're going to keep looking at the movements of assets that are in the region. But more than likely, what we can do now is just, like I said, watch to see what Washington does next. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Like I said, if you're still here, like and subscribe. In the end, I just hope the Cuban people are okay. But food for thought as always. Take care.